Dr. Foster, James Flint, PhD, lived a life that looks complete on paper. His name appears on buildings, in records, in formal acknowledgments. By most measures, his story seems finished, but this was the first time I understood that it wasn't. Among a family history filled with accomplished and recognizable figures, his name kept resurfacing. Steady, respectable, unquestioned, and yet something about it resisted explanation. Because before the honors, before the permanence of his name set in stone, he entered the world already defined, not by family, by process. He was shaped by institutions that valued order over origin and discretion over disclosure, a system that recorded placements without explanations. That changed names in part to protect perception. He did not reject the system, he lived within it, and in so doing, he became someone easy to admire. I carry his name, or perhaps I share it, and only now does its weight become clear. In a history crowded with distinction, he represents something quieter, more structural, more enduring. He is the quintessential foster child. This becomes the first person that we've discussed that I know, someone who cared for me in the way a grandfather would, because that, indeed, was who he was. He threw the football with me in the front yard on days gone by, because we shared the love of sport. He gave guidance and gifts. One Christmas gift, I remember, he gave my sister and I Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles tracksuits. We wore them proudly in pictures. He didn't say as such, but given his Northeastern heritage, he surely didn't want his grandchildren to succumb to the wily ways of America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Or maybe it was the photograph of him in the cowboy outfit mentioned in the previous episode that was taken and then resurfaced during some of the most tumultuous times of his life. Either way, football was his forte. I can hear his words echo through generations. Keep your head up. Keep your eyes on the ball. Keep looking forward. He was speaking about football, or he could just as suitably have been discussing the disciplined life he had been living as he coached me up. We've gone through as much of his childhood as we can, and we've come to reasonable conclusions about how he acquired his first name and his last name. How then? And why did Foster get involved in aspects of the court case? We'll look at extensive legal correspondence in just a few, but first let's catch up with as much as we can about our foster child as he moved into adulthood. To be clear, he was a man of his time, and his time was not kind. He came of age when institutions were trusted more than individuals. Adoption and foster care prioritized order and optics, not identity or truth. He was not in the foster care system, although his life clearly modeled one. He lived with his mother and grandparents from birth until about 2 years old. Then he lost his mom, Ruth Stoughton, to marriage. Then just before he lost his grandmother, Mary Stoughton, to death, changes were made. Knowing full well that the 7-year-old wouldn't fend well for himself in the Stoughton family, Foster somehow became connected to Mary Jane Ahers, who, as the recent widow of Dr. Omar Alpha Flint, found an adoption window to posthumously secure the Flint name for our foster child. One of the first occasions I remember with my grandfather was his retirement from the Bridgeville School District. He had worked in the Bridgeville system for 25 plus years, and in education for more than 40. My father and I traveled via plane to see the ceremony. It was my first flight. Somewhere between the excitement of the plane ride and the pageantry of the balloons, I remember more than anything the speech my grandfather gave. Not so much the words, but the attention he commanded and the focused, meticulous precision of his words. It wasn't loosely constructed or emotional. No tears. No, sir. There would be time for crying on someone else's watch, not his. Life had thrown so many loose ends at him. He knew how to meet the moment. He knew how to talk with people. He knew what he had been through, even if the audience and I at the time didn't. Nearly 20 years after his retirement and several years after his death, they named the Foster J. Flint Gymnasium after him. He was noted for having established the Henlopen Athletic Conference, a new concept at the time. He was a successful competitor and champion. In 1983, Foster Red Flint, his collegiate nickname for his striking red hair, was inducted into the St. Anselm's Athletics Hall of Fame. He captained the 1932 undefeated football team. Between the undefeated season of 1932 and the fully integrated intercollegiate schedule of 1934, there is a year that refuses to sit neatly in the record books. The irony is that when history gets compressed into neat tables, nuance disappears. And sometimes, so too do people. But not Foster. He learned early on and carried lessons forward, excelling in the ultimate meritocracy, life. Somewhere in between his athletic accomplishments and Hall of Fame induction, he spent time working in various athletic departments across the Northeast. He was building out his career in education. Some of the correspondence I'm about to mention comes from the letterhead of Laconia High School's Health and Physical Education Department, a school out of New Hampshire, one of his many stops along the way. It was at this point in his career that Foster seeks to engage with Dr. Lyon. In 1951, correspondence begins on January 23rd from Foster Flint, addressed to Elsie Haynes, editor of the Montgomery County Sentinel of Rockville, Maryland. The year would turn out to be anything but pleasant. In the short letter, Foster asks for issues of the Sentinel newspaper from every Thursday, starting September 28, 1950, through January 11, 1951. The first of those editions appeared just 5 days after the death of Irene Moore. That timing matters. This was not a casual request, and it was not simply an effort to obtain an obituary. By asking for every issue, week after week, Foster was doing something more deliberate. He was assembling a record, tracking notices, watching language, looking for legal filings, estate announcements, and public signals that often appear quietly, not once, but over time. This was preparation. He was building his case for belonging. Then, on February 7th, 1951, a neatly typed letter. Most of the items detailed below were impeccably typed, as if greater formality would suit the situation more capably. A letter from Donald O'Hara, presumably Foster's lawyer to A. Cap F. B. Dow, Esquire, read, "This man wants a brief personal face-to-face interview with Dr. Lyon. The doctor will remember the man as a child in 1911 under the given name of Foster at a time when the doctor was stationed in Rutland, Massachusetts. A further reminder will be the name of Ruth." F.B. Dow was certainly Fayette Dow of Dow, Loney's, and Albertson, a prominent D.C. law firm noted for and associated with regulatory work. Fayette Dow was the founding figure. Tracking the same correspondence further, we learn the following. This man, our man, Foster Flint, has tried several times to make an appointment with the doctor by phone, but the phone has been answered by someone giving the name of Martha Prettyman. Prettyman declines to let the call go beyond her. It continues. Foster was in Washington during the Christmas holidays and called at the doctor's apartment, but was met by the same Prettyman, who told him that the doctor was not at home, though he, Foster Flint, thought he got a glimpse of the doctor through the door. Foster asked if I could arrange a meeting. Then a few weeks later, in a February 20th, 1951 letter, marked Memorandum from the desk of Donald O'Hara to Louis B. Arnold, who was in fact Dr. James Lyon's attorney. The attorneys had agreed to take matters up with their clients. However, this portion was telling as O'Hara wrote. He, Lyon, pointed out to me that if this were only a question of renewing a social acquaintance, it obviously would not be necessary to proceed by this method, and therefore there must be a claim of some kind involved. As if that weren't the destruction of any harbingers of hope, this closing paragraph doesn't pull any punches. Listen in as Dr. Lyon's representatives cut to the chase. Since Lyon did not know the nature of the claim, he said that putting the worst interpretation upon it, we might assume that Foster claims to be the son of Dr. Lyon. Lyon said that even assuming that were the case, Dr. Lyon would have no responsibility for a son, either legitimate or illegitimate, after he had attained majority. To be fair, the doctor had just lost his wife and was now in for a surprising legal fight of a lifetime. In a review, the next to last letter in our set of correspondence between our foster child and his attorney becomes telling. We learn as much by what is crossed out as by what is then written into the final draft. Our foster child had the following removed. It is quite aggravating to realize how powerful the $sign has become where moral obligations should supersede. Taken out. Instead, he replaced it with, in his own handwritten note, I would like to meet him, but under the circumstances, I suppose it is not possible. In the end, he summed up the situation. I have come to the conclusion that it is best to say thank you and not pursue the matter any further. Then a final piece of contextual information, another picture, one that looks to be worth more than 1,000 words, but I'll do what I can to explain it in less. The photograph captures Foster Flint low to the ground, set in a three-point stance on an open football field. A successful collegiate athlete, no doubt. A place of quiet comfort and confidence for him. The grass is worn and uneven, the lines faint. It appears to be more practice field than a stadium. There are no stands in view. No crowd, just space, trees at the edge of the frame, and the readiness to launch. He is in his football uniform, a long-sleeve jersey, padded trousers, thick socks pulled high. The equipment is functional, not decorative. This is football before the spectacle, before the branding, before television. It's 100 years before name, image, and likeness. But this is his name, his image, his likeness. A game still rooted in discipline, contact, and impact. A place and game where he could take out his life's frustrations on others. His posture is compact and deliberate. One hand planted firmly on the ground, the other drawn in close. His weight is forward. He is not posing. He is set. The expression matters most. His face is focused, unsmiling, intent. The location is not a place to smile. The disposition is not aggressive, but resolved and ready. Content. He looks straight ahead as if waiting for a signal that exists just outside the frame. There is no sense of performance here, only readiness, as if to say, if you follow me, and when you are ready, rest assured I will protect you and take you where you want to go. This was during his time at St. Anselm College, when football still mirrored the institutions themselves. Orderly, restrained, demanding. The kind of place where preparation mattered as much or more than recognition. It is a photograph of a young man learning how to hold position, how to stay set, how to absorb a blow and yet continue forward. Seen now, it's a view into sports and a study in formation. He was a man placed deliberately into structure, always ready for the play to begin. And then there is a final handwritten note, handwritten by the attorney on an index card no larger than the photograph itself. It reads, "Foster, you apparently have the facts, and the doctor is not interested, to put it mildly. Will you gain anything by pursuing the matter further?" Foster does not answer this question in a court of law. Discretion proves to be the better part of valor. He steps aside and turns 40 in July of that year. The case moves forward without him. Foster will return to our story later, not in action, but in comparison to his sister Betsy, and the next episode of Betsy and the Beast belongs to her. Let's get to know Betsy.